Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me for the gold standard once again. Hopefully, you've been watching some of the videos. I have three on the channel that precede this one that are all about your income and doing math and coming up with ratios. And hopefully, you've watched that, especially the one about the ratios. Previous to this one will make much more sense once you've been through some of the math of the ratios of how dependent you are on certain income streams and certain funders that you have. And so the next step in the process, this is an overall budgeting process, but also fundraising process, trying to diversify our income streams to make sure that our organization has financial sustainability so that we're able to grow. And so the whole premise here is going back through the income that we have. What income sources do we have? So what categories? Whether it's grants, local governments, individual and family contributions, maybe of businesses, event sponsorships, things of that nature. So different categories of income we're calling income streams. And then we're also looking at how dependent we might be on in particular funders. So you see here, the first level of gauging risk is what level or percentage of reliance is your organization comfortable with? So when you go back to those ratios in the video, there are two different ratios that you start working on. And one is to see how reliant you are on any particular income stream. So category of income, maybe that's grants. And you're going to evaluate that. And you're going to need to talk to your board, your staff, and find out what level you're comfortable with. For some people, anything over maybe 8%, and we're a little nervous. So we want to start looking at that. Anything, over 10%, 20%, whatever your organization decides it's uncomfortable with, that level, you start looking at those. So you'll need to do the ratios for each one of your income streams and find out what percentage of reliance you have on them. And then the other ratio is trying to define how dependent you are on any one particular funder. So if you're looking at your income stream of grants, and maybe you get 3 grants in a year and one of them is 80%. We want to really start looking at that. Are we comfortable with 80% of our grant money coming from this one particular source? Or do we really want to spread that out? Especially if grants are a really large source of our annual income. If that, that number of dollars that we get annually from grant money is a significant portion of our whole annual income, then we're really starting to gauge what is the risk of that? What if that goes away? How does that affect and impact the programs that we run and our organization as a whole? So as we're gauging risk, we're going to figure out what percentage of reliance we're comfortable with, and we're going to try to figure out what the risk is to each funding stream. And it's sort of like predicting the stock market. You don't really know. There are certain risks you might be able to factor in, things you might be able to see coming, and things you just have to speculate a little bit about. But this is all just in trying to figure out how comfortable we are with where we are and what we can do about it so that we know we're planning for financial stability and sustainability. And so then we also want to look at what are the risks to receiving continued support from our current funders. So not just what might make a certain thing go away, but certain funders, individual companies, businesses, foundations, families. What are the risks to those? Why might they go away? And one of the things that I encourage my clients to do is look at the opposite. And the only word I could figure out that was the opposite of risk was opportunity. So as you're looking at these large funders, or maybe you're starting to look at some of the smaller ones as well, is what are the opportunities that are there? Especially if you feel like a large funder has a big risk of going away, then maybe you want to start looking at some of the smaller ones. Can we lift any of those up to that level? What are some opportunities that might be available to us? And how do the answers of these questions affect your budget and your funding plan? So if we think there's a fairly good chance that this, I don't know, company sponsorship or grant opportunity might not be there next year, how are we going to replace it? What can we use to leverage maybe to get more? Or how can we build that relationship to make sure it doesn't go away? So you want to start looking at all of these things. So this was a slide from a funding planning presentation I did earlier in the year. And there's a second one that goes with it. So hopefully if I can get my slides to move. Of course not while you're watching. Here we go. I think I've done it. There we go. So here you can see there's a little chart. Oh, and now they're all moving. Okay, hang on here. Now we're out of control. Okay, here we are. Sorry about that. I try to keep all my technical difficulties off the screen. I'm going to shift over here so I can see the whole chart and you can see the whole chart. Sometimes it doesn't work out. Technical difficulties, they come all over the place. So you see here now the chart to really show you some of those questions that I asked in the last slide and how you can apply them. So here you see 4 examples of funding sources for this made up awesome organization. Number 1 is a foundation grant. Number 2 is a county, corporate sponsorships, and then Foundation B, so another grant. And here is the single reliance. So this is where that other video is going to come in handy to you. The single reliance ratio for these different sources of income are 3% for the first grant, 10 for the county, 12 for corporate sponsorships, and 15 for the second grant. So as you can see, it sort of builds as you go down. So we may or may not want to look at that 3%. That's pretty low. However, we're looking at it because we know it's a guaranteed risk. The risk is continued funding once it's not a new program. And this is something that I've shared with people several years ago. I had a grant that was to run a pilot program. It was literally a year 1 only grant. No matter how well you did or how well this pilot program performed, you weren't ever going to get this grant again. So we knew year 2 of this program, we have to replace that income. Now, luckily, the same foundation had what was an implementation grant, I think they called it. And so in year 2, we could take year 1 and all the data we had collected and apply for a year 2 grant. But of course, there's no guarantee. As much as they might love us, our grant application might not stack up to somebody else's and they might win the money instead of us. So that was a risk to the source. So the budget changes as a result. We're going to try to leverage for matching funds in additional grants. So we might go to some other foundations and say, you know what, we have this pilot program and it's going super well. We're really proud of it. We want to see it continue. We're hoping it will be a permanent program. Would you be willing to take a look at our first grant and use it to help us leverage into additional funding years? Would you be willing to do that? Or maybe we go to some other partners, maybe some of the businesses around town. Look, we're going to lose this funding next year, not because the program's not working, but because the grant just isn't written that way. So we'd like you to take a look at what we've been able to accomplish using Foundation A's grant money and help us fund year 2. And so those are the things we're trying to figure out ahead of time. So normally we wouldn't look at 3%. It's pretty small, except that we know this is guaranteed money out the door next year. We're not going to get it back. So we have to figure out something else. So then the county, 10%. That's, I consider 10% to be fairly significant. And we know that the risk to the source was that, in looking at this a few years ago, COVID-19 recovery funding requests were coming into the county from numerous other organizations and companies. And so we worry, are they going to give us that same $30,000 next year, knowing that they're going to want to help a lot more organizations and businesses due to COVID recovery efforts. And so our organization, this awesome organization, has decided they're not making any changes to next year's budget, even though they know the risk is there and it is definitely a real risk. But they've decided that instead of asking for less money or expecting less money, they're going to make a stronger case to their county for continued funding. They are going to relate their services to COVID recovery efforts. They're going to say something along the lines of, hopefully they created a wonderful narrative that said, the services that we provide to the county will also help with other organizations and businesses that are suffering through COVID. So the more money that you give to our organization, the more you spread it out just through that one effort and let us take some of the burden off of you. So we would like to have continued funding, maybe an agreement you will beef up some of your programs or put out a new special something that helps other businesses and organizations as a way to sort of sweeten the pot. But that's what this organization decided. Then we see the corporate sponsorships, $36,000 a year, which is 12%. And we know that, again, COVID is a risk there, that a lot of businesses aren't going to have as much money to spend in 2021 as they did in 2020. So we're going back in time here. Sorry about that. But so we just know no matter what we do, there's going to be some businesses that aren't going to be able to afford to support us. Maybe we will try harder with businesses that are doing well during the pandemic to ask them for a little more money to make up the difference. But overall, this organization decided we're just going to forecast a 2% decrease because it's reality. It's where people are right now. And 2%, honestly, it was pretty, that's a pretty small decrease considering what COVID did to a lot of businesses. So obviously they were going to try really hard to keep as much as they could of those corporate sponsorships. And then Foundation B is 15% of the annual budget, which is fairly significant. So what is the risk? Well, the funded program is aligned with the foundation goals. So they figure there's very little risk. We think there's a really good relationship, a really great alignment, good partnership. So what are the budgetary changes? This is the one I was talking about, where instead of looking at risk, we're looking at opportunity. So this organization sees this risk as an opportunity. There's a really good relationship and alignment there of missions. So they're going to apply for increased funding to cover the Feed Warranton, and this is totally made up, the Feed Warranton program to cover the other risks. So you can see I took out names to save the innocent in here, and then I threw a couple in, even though this is all made up anyway. So that should just say that we're going to, Feed the Town program to cover Foundation A's grant. And that is what is going to happen there. We think Foundation B has such a great alignment and relationship with us that maybe they will start taking over for that other program that we had, that we know the pilot program grant is no longer available to us. So we're going to leverage that relationship and hope for increased funding next year. So I hope these are really good examples that help you figure out how you can start gauging risk and being able to predict next year's budget a little bit better and create that financial sustainability and stability piece that your organization deserves. If you have any questions, please load them in the comments or go back to the YouTube channel description where my contact information is. I'd be happy to help you. I love answering these questions. I am a spreadsheet nerd. I can Excel spreadsheet you all over the place with budgets and numbers and figures to help you figure out what your organization needs to make that financial sustainability piece. And I hope that you bring in lots of dollars and make your programs all stronger. And I want all of you nonprofit leaders to be able to succeed at your mission. So any way I can help you, please reach out. Thanks so much.